Hello and welcome to the Columbus community to our April 22nd Audit and Accountability meeting. I am Carol Beckerly. I'm the vice chair of this committee, standing in for James Ragland, our chair. I think the first order of business is to take attendance, Madam Auditor. Is that correct?
Okay. Yes. I will be happy to do that.
Can everyone hear okay through this mask?
Yes, you're coming through fine.
Okay, Mr. Ragland,
Here.
Ms. Beckerly,
Here.
Mr. Grant,
Here.
Mr. Vajon, Ms. Adair, Mr. Jordan.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. Our first order of business on the agenda, or should we should agree to the agenda? Do we have to? Yes, okay, so shall we pull up the agenda? No, all right. So you've all received a copy of the agenda and we would like to vote, see if anyone has any changes to the agenda. If not, we'll vote to accept the agenda and move on. Can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Jordan,
Yes.
and Chair Ragland.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Terrific. Okay. The first item we have on the agenda is to discuss the draft of the amended charter, or the amendments to the Audit and Accountability Charter.
Vice Chair Beckerly, have the minutes been voted on and approved?
Okay, then I'm not looking at the right, yes, no, okay, so let's do that first. First order of business, let's approve the minutes from our February 25th, 2021 agenda. Thanks, Ms. Smith.
No problem.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Let's vote to accept the minutes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Jordan,
Yes.
Chair Ragland,
Yes.
and Ms. Beckerly,
Yes,
and that motion carries.
terrific, thank you. Now for the next item of business, we were all provided a copy of the amendments for the Audit and Accountability Charter. We'd be happy to discuss any concerns or questions or suggestions anyone may have. To provide a little bit of background, this amended charter, these amendments to the charter are part of an overall effort on the part of the board to restructure and bring into conformance all of our committee charters, and to emphasize that the roles of the committees are advisory to the board, essentially. And our committee is a little bit more involved because of the, it oversees the process of, or the Office of Internal Audits. We have a few extra provisions in ours that might be different than some of the others, but that is essentially what's driving this process. So has everyone, you have something to say, Mr. Ragland?
I was just going to ask Auditor Smith if she could just go through, there's a couple of differences between the old charter and the new. If she could just highlight those very briefly, that would be good. And then really want to open up the floor for any type of discussion and comments that would come from the committee members. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Okay. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes.
What we did was, as Chair Ragland said, we tried to provide a document, a bridging document to kind of show the old from the new. And it's broken out into basically 3 sections. The first section is content in the current charter that is not in the proposed redrafted charter. So as you can see, the current charter talks about committee activities, and then it talks about compensation and expense reimbursement. And just kind of let me back up for a second. The current charter was basically taken from the Institute of Internal Auditors kind of model charter language, and we kind of massaged it to fit into our environment. So that's why, you know, for a lot of the corporate audit committees, there is payment and there's expense reimbursement. So we just kind of followed that and included that in that language in the current model. The next section are items that are in both, but the language or the text is kind of significantly different. So under the current charter, you know, it might say to assist the board in fulfilling its responsibilities to provide oversight and governance with regard to the following. There is something like that in the proposed charter, but it's not going to be exactly word for word. So that's the second section. And let's see. The third section, let's see, am I on the right page? I started on the wrong page, I'm sorry. Okay, if I can get to the right page, that will help. Okay, so the first page talks about content in the proposed redraft charter that's not in the current charter. So I wasn't gonna read it word for word, but you can see, you know, the current charter talks about the strategic plan. The proposed charter talks about the strategic plan, talks about duties, talks about conducting studies. None of this is in the last approved charter. The second section.
You know what, can you go back up to that for a minute so I can explain, since we're talking about that language in particular, Ms. Smith? Part of where this language comes from, and part of this overall effort that is sort of, that has extended to all the committees that the board has been undertaking, is to make sure that the language that authorizes the activities of each committee ties back to the bylaw provision that creates the committees in the first place. So it's a conformance effort that we've been doing. And so that's where that language comes from. If you could just highlight it for a second. Shall review and make recommendation. No, where is it now?
Which section are you on?
Now, I don't know which section you are, but you just said the language about the advise and conduct. It might be on the next page where you talked about the activities and the authority.
Okay. So the second section here, this is what's in the current, but it's not in the proposed, such as committee activities and then compensation and expense reimbursement.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. But anyway, I can just talk about it informally. So the language in the bylaw talks about the authority of the committee is to conduct studies, provide advice to the board and recommendations, and including recommendations about policy. And so that's the language that we're taking and making sure is the guiding language in all the charters for our committees. And that's the source of all of this. which is important to understand that that's kind of what's driving these modifications and amendments.
Okay, and then the next section, it's very brief, are things that were in the current charter that are not in the proposed charter. And then the final section are in both, but the wording is a little bit different. The wording is significantly changed enough that we thought we would bring it to your attention. So that's basically how this bridging document is set up.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. I just wanted to make sure that the committee had a full understanding that there are some changes. And this really is an alignment exercise. I mean, every single committee is going through this exercise. Every single committee will be sending their revised charter to the board for approval. We just had the first reading of the policy review, and they've got a new title now. But we just had the first reading of their charter change on Tuesday and expect to go through completing that process at the next board meeting. So with that, are there any questions from the committee regarding the proposed charter changes?
Chair or Vice Chair, I do have a question.
Sir, yes, sir, Mr. Board.
I was reading not through the bridge document because I couldn't find any mention of it in the bridge document, but I was reading through the, and I think I got to about, my question lies on page 1 of the proposed charter. I was wondering if we could speak to, under the authority, that paragraph says the committee has no operational authority with regard to any office or function of the district. But then as I read the bullet points under the authority, it says approval of all auditing and non-audit services provided by independent accounting firms, including the auditor of state. I got a couple of questions as it interacts with operational. Does that mean that any work done for auditing or non-audit services provided by independent accounting firms now require the approval of this committee? And then secondly, non-audit services, I'm just trying to get an idea of the scope of where the committee's headed. And then I'm kind of curious why the scope is limited to only those services provided by independent accounting firms.
Stan, where are you looking?
Page 1 of the document that I had, not the old one, the new one.
Okay, under what section? Like background and purpose, authority?
It's under authority.
Okay. Duties or advisory, bro?
I think you got the old one up.
No,
This
this is
is-
the new one.
Yeah, this is
I
the
think
new-
the language you were referring to, Stan, I think was in the old one.
Well, let's see.
Yeah, what
Oh,
I
you know what? My apologies. The title of this document is ANA Charter Amended, and I stopped reading at that point because it says amended 4/26 of 18.
that will be the old.
So the
Oh.
new one is ANA Charter CAB draft.
Yes.
CAB
Yes.
being my initials.
Yes, that's correct, Stan. That is correct.
Okay. Total misinterpretation of mine. I'm pouring over the wrong document. I was trying to do my homework. Sorry.
No, that's
So
actually good news because
I'll read this one as quick as I can. Thank you for indulging me.
Yes, sir.
Now we have two committee members that couldn't make today's meeting. Was it the will of the committee to move forward or to ask questions and make recommendations, or what's the will of the committee as far as moving forward? Or
Well, my recollection when we were putting together this agenda was that if you look at where you have the screen up right now, Ms. Smith, it says under 5-year strategic plan, there's a parenthetical at the very end of that that says upon its finalization,
yes,
referring to the 5-year strategic plan, that we decided to just present this for discussion
okay,
because we hadn't finalized it at the time. Now, as it turns out, we finalized it on Monday. Then for the rest of the board member is our 5-year strategic goals and guardrails that we voted on Monday. And part of the other alignment process, as James suggested, was to make sure that in addition to aligning the roles and the responsibilities and the authorities of the committee to the bylaws, was also to make sure that we were all aligned with the same strategic plan with the goals and guardrails. And that's why that provision's in there, and we were still in the process of finalizing it. So we're planning on bringing it back at the next meeting with that language cleaned up now that we have finalized it. So I think I don't think we're planning on voting this evening.
okay.
Is that consistent with your recollection, Chair Ragland?
Yes, I want to make sure, and we are missing Mr. Vajan today. And I just want to make sure that the committee has some time to really kind of digest it. I think maybe Tuesday was the first time they got a chance to look at that bridge document. But the goals and guardrails are completed now. And what I would propose that we do is just bring this forward for approval at our June meeting. And then send it to the board for a vote in June. That would just give us a little bit more time. And then if we have questions between now and our June meeting, they could submit them to Auditor Smith, and we can get some work done on that if need be. But yes, we've just done first reading for one committee on Monday, and so this process is ongoing. So I think we'll be set to go in June.
Okay.
And I think also just for all of the committee to be current on where we are in terms of our strategic plan, we need to take an action item to send out a copy of all of that to our committee members so they can see where we ended up on those goals and guardrails and how they're all tied to the strategic plan. We're pretty excited about it, actually. It's the beginning of a process just to indulge us all for a few minutes, where once the plan is in place, we're going to be instituting a calendaring and monitoring process to keep us on point in terms of managing that and trying to institute some, I want to say discipline, but I think structure might be the better word, to our meetings to make sure that we keep focused on the outcomes that we're targeting. So it's part of a bigger process, although clearly getting those goals and guardrails in for the 5-year plan was the critical piece, but we're as excited for the restructuring that's going forward.
I did have a question for Madam Co-Chair or the Madam Auditor on the proposed charter. Something to think about a little bit on section 4. We have the oversight of the audit plan and reports of the Office of Internal Auditor. There are several items on here that I don't know that we have talked about in the past, which is fine. I think it's more comprehensive and I think aligns with what the risks that we have in the district. But in particular, I don't know that we have seen reviews of regular reports of compliance with legal and regulatory requirements. So that's probably something new that would be on the calendar for this committee to review. I do know we have spoken on an annual basis about the code of conduct and the whistleblower plan. But in particular, I was just thinking of that third bullet. So make sure I understood the comprehensiveness of what that could entail, because that could be pretty broad. If it's intended to be broad, that's fine. I think we'll have to just calendar at the meetings how we would break it up into digestible segments.
If I can, I think this is lifted from the previous. The only thing
It was.
the only thing that caught my attention, and it was, I think last year, Mr. Barnes, our legal counsel, did come and give an overview of some compliance and regulatory issues. But once again, this is the committee's document, and if there's something more that you want or something less that you want, we can certainly do that.
The thought would be, just for consideration, would be, I think an appropriate role for the internal audit department would be to make sure that the compliance department is functioning as it's designed, and reviewing key compliance activities and regulatory requirements across the district. And whether we have that as a, within your risk review, your cycle that you're reviewing as the compliance and legal oversight, then I do think once a year or as appropriate, and a briefing to this committee on key matters that have been resolved or outstanding would be appropriate if that's what the board would like this committee to do. Otherwise, it could stay at the board level, and we could just have the internal audit department review the operational effectiveness of the compliance and legal departments. So either way works. I just think we ought to have some clarity on what we mean by that.
Okay.
I had a little bit of comment on it. I know part of the whole financial audit as it relates to compliance, there is a legal portion and a compliance portion that the independent auditor state does and is reporting back to us. So that goes into ORC, it goes into revised code, it goes into a lot of different areas. So I was thinking of this section really relating more towards as it relates to financial reporting than it is just to overall legal regulatory compliance, but that is more narrowly focused towards financial reporting.
That would make sense, Mr. Grant. If speaking of requirements for use of grants, use of funding, yeah, that would make sense. So again, I think clarity would be helpful.
And so just so I can make sure I'm clear on what we're talking about, is we're talking about the scope of the committee and the mission of on the Office of Internal Audit in terms of whether it's beyond just financial compliance into overall compliance with other legal and regulatory requirements. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I think it would be. So I think as Mr. Grant said, I think it's clear we would have the oversight of what the auditor state or other independent auditors would have, but I think the effectiveness of the monitoring of other compliance and legal regulatory processes would be an important aspect of internal audit, that they're actually monitoring, there's processes in place that monitor compliance with other key laws and regulations outside of financial reporting is a role that internal audit in many cases performs.
So you're both saying that it should be in there, and then we just need to define it clearly.
There's an
It
aspect
may
of
need to be a little more narrowly, focused. I mean, for instance, I'm not sure if we get into any kind of HIPAA regulations. I
Right.
think that's beyond the scope of our
Right.
review.
Yep,
So
exactly.
there's other legal issues that wouldn't come under the purview of this committee.
And how, so, all right, well,
No, but let's do a little work on that.
Yep.
I
I
And
understand
then
that.
we'll have some changes and communicate those back to you both, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Grant. We'll get that tidied up before June. Oh, that's good. That gives us some time to get that stuff tidied up, and we'll work on that very specifically.
And that's exactly the kind of input that we need from the committee, so thank you.
Yeah, the other one that just if I may, please, on this, the second
Yes.
bullet, of that same section. I do
Yeah.
think a comment, unless I missed it someplace in here, would be relative to the information security and information technology. I might have missed that in here later on, but
I don't think it's expressly identified.
I'm sorry, where are you at, Mr. Jordan?
I'm looking at this section 4, second bullet point. We speak to the internal controls of the accounting and finance functions, and I would also think if
Yes.
information technology would be in the purview of this committee as well.
I can add
Okay.
that.
But I'll continue to look. If I have any other thoughts, I'll make sure I communicate them, Chair Ragland.
Thank you. We've got a little working list here. We'll make sure that those changes are articulated in the document, that we'll highlight them in the discussion section at in June. But we want to make sure prior to that meeting that we've gotten this in front of you and that everything is satisfactory. So we'll do a little work and get back to you both on that. Thank you. Unless there's others, Mr. Jordan or Mr. Grant, I want to make sure that, you know, and if there are, you know, maybe you get through, you know, a little bit more of this and you digest it. We are going to get you the document that gives you details of the goals and guardrails. So you'll be able to partner that with this charter change. And if there are questions, please make sure that you get those to Auditor Smith, and we'll make sure that they are addressed. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Madam Co-Chair. Please proceed.
I'll stop
Oh, that's
sharing.
okay. I think we're co-chairing at this point, which is just fine with me. Okay. For the next item on our agenda, we were looking for a presentation of the OIA activity dashboard. So,
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Smith.
I'm trying to go paperless here, so just kind of bear with me. If you're wondering why I'm not shoveling through all my paper, I'm trying to come into the 21st century. Okay. Okay, for the Office of Internal Audit, for our report, we have 2 items. First is a request for release of a report. And then the second will be the internal audit activity and dashboard report. So the first request for release of a report will be presented by Harold Saunders over some work that we did in HR. And then after he presents that report and you have the discussions that we normally have, that will be followed by the internal audit activity and dashboard report, which will be conducted by Kevin O'Connor. So at this point, I will turn it over to Mr. Saunders.
All right, thank you, Auditor Smith. As we get that up and running, Chairperson Ragland, faculty committee members, and the board members, Pierce and Brown, good afternoon. I'm here today to present the Office of Internal Audit benefits audit and to address any concerns or questions that you may have regarding its contents and to request the authorization for its release. But first, let me begin because I would like to thank Ms. Myra Wright and Mr. Mike DeFabio, our HR Chief and Executive Director, for their steadfast commitment in assisting IIA in completing this audit. I would also like to thank especially Ms. Courtney Hale and Ms. Holly Oslowski, Director of Administration and Benefits Manager, for their availability, patience, and commitment while I learned this process. So thank you. If I may direct your attention to the report that's on the screen, I plan today to walk you through the report by highlighting material matters and high-risk issues resulting from the audit. Please feel free at any time to interrupt me to address any concerns or questions that you may have or for clarification. Also, as we move through the report, I will defer periodically to the process owners to enable them to respond to the recommendations and offer any comment that they may have. So let's begin. Please turn to page 3 of the report. Thank you. Our audit was conducted into accordance with professional standards established by the Institute of Internal Auditors. Those standards require us to conduct our audit in an efficient manner by not duplicating effort in procedures and processes conducted by others. As you know, that in spring of 2020, the Council of Great City Schools issued an HR peer review report on our department, on that department. OIA did take a review of this report, and we learned that there were procedures that they had performed that addressed those of the objectives that we had planned for this audit. And consequently, we had to adjust this audit not to duplicate that effort. But however, we'll speak a little bit more on this as we move into issue 1, and where we have offered some other complementary recommendations. And we can move to page 4, please. On page 4 and 5, you will see here that our objectives of the engagement. You may notice in your preview of the audit that this is a direct review of the internal control processes used by benefits and the service organizations that they employ to perform certain benefit services. Those organizations provide claims processing, service authorization, and claims payment, among other things, as a business functions of the district. So our goal was to gain an understanding of those operational process flows, those key controls that met the benefits objectives, and to determine whether those controls were effective. And we believe we have done that through the performance of this audit. We have provided some of that information within the context of this report for enhanced information and understanding. Before we move on, I'll stop here and see if there's any questions or comments. Thank you. Thank you. Therefore, we'll move to issue 1, which is on page 9. Thank you. The Council of Great City Schools offered their peer report for the HR department relative to its operations, governance, training, and technology processes in their comparison to other like districts or governments across the country. That report was released. I did take a review of that report, as I've mentioned before, but we took it a step further and we offered some mitigation hints to the HR leadership. These hints were the starting steps for them to go about mitigating these recommendations. But we did believe without the coordination and the centralized efforts of to address the recommendations that there was a potential those issues may not get mitigated. And therefore, we made the recommendation that the department develop a change management team with the needed participants, for example, like employees, internal customers, partners, and consultants, to develop mitigations to address the recommendations, and that they would start from those mitigation points that we offered. We further believe that there should be a lead that was a dedicated person who ensured that the team policies, governance policies and procedures were carried out, and that the monitoring of the implemented mitigations would occur.
Okay, I have a quick question.
Please, thank you.
And so the finding is the finding of the Council of Great City Schools audit, or was it a finding that you came up with of your separate activity with respect to the benefits?
Thank you for
audit?
Let me clarify that. We had originally planned this audit and started the field work when the Council of Great Cities school report came out.
Okay.
So we took a look at that to make sure that we weren't doing any duplication of effort. Mm-hmm. And for our objectives 1 and 2, we found that the council had conducted procedures which addressed those objectives. So we went a little further and decided that we would offer some mitigation hints to help HR leadership to address those recommendations that are in HR report. And this is the recommendation that we're offering in this report to help them kind of like functionalize that process in addressing those mitigation recommendations, excuse me.
Okay, so when you further up, when you talked about your finding and the level of risk,
Yes.
That finding was based on the Council of Great City Schools.
Well, the risk that we've identified is that,
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
yes, those issues would not be mitigated. So we wanted to create a structure, which is our recommendation, so that it would help HR leadership proceed to address those recommendations.
Okay, so the risk that you've identified as issue 1 or item 1
Yes,
was
if you want.
a concern that which was identified, there weren't processes in place to address what was identified by the Council of Great City Schools?
Well, there wasn't a formalized process.
Right.
Yeah, we do have
And-
processes throughout the district that basically does address whatever recommendations that may be offered by us or external auditors. But because of the magnitude of these issues, we thought it would be best to formalize this process, centralize it, create some governance around the procedures so they can go about mitigating these, because it's going to take several departments, individuals,
Right.
to do this overarching work that was recommended through the Council of Great City Schools report.
Yeah, it's a systemic correction.
Absolutely.
Right.
So we're kind of
Okay.
like creating a new process, or requesting and recommending a new process in which they can use over and over again to make these kind of procedures to mitigate whatever recommendations or issues that may arise, whether that's from external or internal auditors.
Okay. Thank you. I'm clearer now.
I'm sorry, Mr. Saunders, can I ask another question, please? Ask a question.
Yes, Madam Superintendent.
So based on what you just described, then one, I'm still don't know what mitigation hints are. If you can define that for me, what that means. And two, isn't it part of when an organization received an audit, is up to, as a part of that audit, addressing the audit, that department is responsible for setting the structure of addressing the audit. And are we saying that OIA is going to do that on behalf of that department, and that a department not do that alone? I'm just trying to understand, why is OIA recommending a structure for the HR department when HR department knows and it has been identified by Council of Great City Schools what the HR department needs to do in order to strengthen its department and its workflow?
Thank you for the question, Madam Superintendent.
Can I jump in here? Harold, I'll let you answer the hints. We didn't.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll let you address that. But as far as the recommendations, for me, it's no different than when we do our follow-up. The Council of Great City Schools, they had come in and they had did their report, mm-hmm. and they had made recommendations. And what we did was we looked at all the recommendations and made suggestions as far as how HR could consider going about and addressing it. I mean, the strategies are certainly theirs.
Okay.
If there were some things that were in the report that they felt, was not significant or did not need to, they didn't feel that it needed to be addressed, or they disagreed with the recommendation, that was HR's decision. We may recommend, and Harold, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm the one who said, let's see how we can assist in this endeavor, because what I was hoping to do for HR, for any department, is, come in and offer our recommendations as far as, how they can address the recommendations. But it was for them to come up with the solutions. We just, here's a process to consider. But I'll let Harold jump in here in case I'm stating something wrong, because, we're planning to use this this format in the future going forward, whenever we are asked to, look at a report that's been done from an external entity that we haven't done, but if we're asked to come in and provide assistance, this is kind of what we are planning on doing. It's like, okay, let us look at the report, kind of dive through it. Okay, if it were my department, if, from past experience, here's how you might want to go about addressing, and getting control over these systemic issues.
Okay, thank you. Thank you the way, I like the way you described it, because I wasn't sure. I just wasn't sure and when you said that these are recommendations of how they can move forward, I just wanted to make sure that I understood that this is not yet another assessment of the work, but this is a part of the overarching work in which we're getting some assistance to address the items that was identified in the audit. Okay, thank you. You clarified it for me.
Can I say that just to nail down that clarification?
Okay.
So these are recommendations as opposed to corrective action measures.
That's how I understand it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Just to be clear,
As you refer to those mitigation hits, that's correct.
That's what mitigation hints are. Okay. Okay.
Yes, yeah, that's what they are. Just a process so you can get to the point to make those corrections.
That's good. Okay. Okay.
And
Thank you.
It's very, we make sure that we don't walk that line into, taking over management's responsibilities.
Absolutely.
But it's a good question, great conversation, and thank you for asking for the clarification.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, but I'm gonna have to do the yes and to this. So as I understand it, the report was issued with recommendations to the district. The district will be owning the action plan, any strategic actions that need to be changed, and you provide some recommendations by which they can accomplish those. And noted that what they really need is good change management processes, governance structure to assign accountability, action plan timing, issue owners to resolve this. So then my question is, will internal audit be following up to see if those recommendations were implemented, or are you stepping out at this point?
No,
that's exactly the right question.
We are treating this as how we would do follow-up, how we do our follow-up activity.
That makes sense. So in my vernacular, we've used outside experts on certain processes that the business maybe have already had a review done. And so they say, here's the recommendations. We've leveraged those so we don't duplicate their work. And we're following up on the outside entities' recommendations along with any other ones that we have to make sure we feel that whatever risk is out there is mitigated to a level that we deem appropriate.
Correct. And hopefully when we get to the dashboard, you'll see where all this is tied together, because of our mitigation report, we just lifted. I'm doing my hand motions. I'm sorry.
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, you're good. So I'll quit talking.
I'm on board. I agree.
But I think that it's worth clarifying, because we've been down this road a few times now, that in terms of ownership, the responsibility for and the ownership of responding to the Council of Great City Schools audit, which was commissioned by management, remains on management, with management. Okay, good. I'm great. I want to make sure, Greg, I saw your nod, because that was the nod. I wanted to make sure we were all clear on that. Okay, excellent.
And I think it's appropriate for internal audit. If management says we have several different options by which we think we can solve this, is there one that you feel may be better? I think that's an appropriate step for internal audit to take. Just let us know that you provided some additional insights to that group. I think if it helps get it done and they could use some further control expertise, that's what your team is really good at. I think we should leverage the expertise.
And especially because of the perspective of the Office of Internal Audit is the systems and how they all interact, and they've got a picture of the whole organization and its intricacies that I think is really helpful, and also the process of how do you follow up.
Yeah,
and
I
critical
agree.
path.
And I appreciate the collaborative process, right? Because I think what has been shared when Carolyn and I have spoken, that we want to make sure that when audits and assessments are done in an organization, that there is follow-up, that we are getting these things done and done in a timely a fashion, and making the corrective actions, and so it doesn't continue to move forward. So I just wanted to make sure I understood it, the clarity, and you explained it beautifully. And I think it demonstrates how a collaborative process can work for an organization our size.
Thank you. So if there's no more discussion there, I will defer to the process owner so they can have the opportunity to respond to these remarks and our recommendations.
Thank you, Harold. Hello, board members. So I can speak directly to our collaboration here and give a pretty substantial overview of how we are already working together on all of this that will help with the conversation that was just had. Harold and I are meeting consistently on both the response to the CGCS audit, the response to this audit, and overall HR departmental transformation. So one of the recommendations from and mitigation hits from audit was a change management committee. As a response to the CGCS audit, we were already putting in place a steering committee. And so I'm looking at that change management piece from 3 different lenses. The first is the steering committee, which includes multiple stakeholders across the organization as well as external stakeholders. We're still putting together the external stakeholder piece, but the internal stakeholder piece is pretty well set. It includes heads of multiple departments, our main stakeholders when it comes to hiring, and several of our customers. So that's the first piece of that. The second is that we have to do a better job internally within the department in change management as it relates to communication, especially during the transformation of the department. So we've put in place multiple actions here. We implemented a monthly HR department meeting. We have bi-weekly HR director meetings. We have weekly HR team meetings. So we are now focused on breaking down silos and really understanding how change can happen within the department and across the department, and as it relates to our customers. And so we want to ensure that our customers understand what change is happening as well. So the last piece of this is we are going to be hiring a project manager who will focus on all of this work. We have a lot that we're trying to get accomplished, but I definitely believe we can get it accomplished. And so as it relates to question 1, question 2, or recommendation 1, 2, and 3 here, I see all 3 of them in one unit, specifically because we're putting together goals, benchmarks, and measures for every team and every team member across HR, so that everyone sees themselves in the work and understands how they their everyday work rolls up and aggregates into the team goals and the departmental goals. And so all of that will sit on dashboards that we're creating right now. We just purchased Tableau. We will have all of our data updating in real time on those dashboards. We want to make our data transparent, and we want to be able to see what we are doing well and what we need to work on. And the third piece of this is, how do we create those benchmarks? And I really want to start, since we have a CGCS audit, with CGCS formulas and what CGCS is telling us are the most important measures as it relates to talent. So the first dashboarding we're going to do is based on their KPI survey, the annual KPI survey that they put in place. So this is all about teacher retention, employee retention, time to hire, a lot of very critical measures that are important to both a school district, but an HR operation as a whole. So for the first 3 mitigation strategies here, I see all 3 of them combined really into this space of transformation that Harold did a great job of identifying. And I think this is a great example of us saying or seeing, here's what we need to do, and then putting together a strategy around it and working directly with OIA to get feedback on whether that strategy is appropriate and redirecting if needed. And in this case, we have really, really clear and really nice alignment between what the recommendations are and what the work is that we would already be doing. Thanks, Harold.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
If there are other further questions, I'll move on to the next issue.
Just if I may,
Yes,
Mr. DeFavo, or Harold or Mr. DeFavo, does internal audit have a non-voting seat at those steering committees where appropriate, just to be able to offer comments and thoughts?
Yes, absolutely.
Good. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. We will move to issue 5 on page 16. If you would follow me there. Thank you. As you may know, that the district pays all its medical and prescription drugs and dental claims from the self-insurance fund. In these benefits areas, that the district is a self-insured organization. In fiscal year 2020, the district paid out approximately 127 million in medical claims and prescription costs. Some organizations of our size have decided to share the claim risk by carrying a stop-loss insurance coverage. This insurance can kick in at the aggregate or the individual level or both at a prescribed predetermined threshold determined by that organization. This coverage enables an organization to limit its risk exposure at a level that's commensurate with the desired tolerable risk levels and the desired expenditure levels. So in the performance of this engagement, we learned that the district did not maintain a stop-loss coverage. So we asked whether the district had conducted a risk analysis to support its decision. The district could not provide any documentation of a risk analysis to inform us of what the risk that we are accepting in the absence of such a coverage, and any acknowledgement of the governing body as to the acceptance of that risk. So therefore, we asked the district to conduct such an analysis to share with the governing body, and they collectively would make a decision on whether they would maintain the current risk level or reduce that by securing stop-loss coverage. So if there aren't any questions there, I will defer to our process owner for any comments and response. Is Mr. Broharic there?
Yep, I'm here. Hey.
Thank you, sir.
I think we annually, when we review setting rates with Aon and their actuary, we bring up the issue of stop loss. I think the issue here is there's no formal documentation and there's no formal reporting out to anyone on that. Conceptually, there's no issue with going through that. There are some things about that that process, that calculation, that evaluation that I want to talk to some others, whether it's OIA and some management, and just talk about how that works and the implications of that analysis. So no issues here. They just want us to document that we've gone through it. I think we meet in the fall. We have open enrollment in October, and we meet prior to that to set the rates. So it's easy. We'll inform Aon that we want to engage with them in that practice. I think that's all part of their services. So I don't anticipate there being some sort of special engagement and cost related to doing that analysis. I think the actuaries, for them, it's rather straightforward. For others of us, it isn't. But so that, this is a fairly easy one.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
I think that's what I said in my response, right, Harold, in a nutshell?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So currently, the district does not have any stop loss insurance.
That is
No.
correct.
Sorry.
Okay. So no top in on the medical, right?
No. No.
I do know that's very popular. Most organizations do have a stop loss at some point. You get those catastrophic illnesses.
Right.
Right.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, I conclude the report presentation, and I thank you for your time, attention, and comments. Good afternoon.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, let my vote sheet, which I never should have taken down in the first place. Okay. Madam Vice Chair, if it's okay with you, would you like to take a vote for a release of this report?
Yeah, it's okay with me, except I thought it was just in draft still. Okay.
It'll
That
be,
we were,
it typically what we do was after, if the committee would have had recommendations, as far as, no, don't release this or make these changes. That's why it says draft. And then once the committee has cleared it, through a proposal for release and then a second and then a vote, then we take off the draft and send it to the board.
okay. Well then, I propose that we take a vote to release the report.
So moved.
Anyone
Second.
want a second?
A
Okay.
second.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Mr. Grant.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Jordan,
Yes.
Chair Ragland,
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
and this motion carried. And now I will turn it over to Mr. O'Connor to go over the Office of Internal Audit dashboard.
Let me try this again. I apologize. Everybody see that
Yes.
already? Mr. Jordan, I just wanted to circle back to your comment about the auditor state looking at those coronavirus funds next year. And House Bill 481 has been passed out of the Ohio legislature that requires or has a statutory mandate for the auditor state that all those funds shall be audited by the auditor state. So there will be significant audit work on their part, I have to believe, looking at those funds. But I just wanted to circle back and give you that.
No, I appreciate that. That was my understanding too from another not-for-profit board I'm on for both the CARES grants and also PPP dollars have an audit requirement along with those. So
So that's why, as Carolyn stated, it's so important for us to work with Scott, Stan, and Catherine to make sure we're all on the same page. So.
And just to add in there, Kevin, I believe it's the budget bill has a provision in there where there's a legislative committee that's going to have oversight. So all I can say is the eyes are upon us. And it would be nice if we had one group to come in, but we will be visited by many. And I appreciate everyone's zest for oversight. Can we pick one? Clearly we can't, apparently, but I'm just, from the practitioner's standpoint, who's going to have to, you know, when they come in and examine it, that'll be their only time to examine us. It'll be the third or fourth time that I'm probably providing the same information and going through the same process. So, you know, I'm perfectly fine with Kevin and Harold coming over and taking a look. And you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm just pointing it out. So we got a lot of people. That's all. I'll stop there. I'm just, so rest assured, a lot of eyes on this.
Thanks, Stan, for the update.
I will say, Stan, that the whole concept of single audit is that you only have one person or one entity coming in and auditing you. That's what single audit is supposed to mean.
And if you run for office, Mr. Grant, you'll have my vote on that.
Yeah, single audit doesn't mean every single day.
That's a different interpretation, that's for sure.
Yeah. Amen.
All righty. I will start with the dashboard and I will start on page 3. And again, please slow me down if I go too fast, or if you have questions, feel free to ask as we go. So page 3, this is our overview and our bar graph, and I will go over the changes from last month. In the audit section of the graph, the gray column, which represents fieldwork completed, has increased by 4. We put the 3 delayed school audits in there and the HR benefits audit. They were all, fieldwork has been completed, and we will be presenting the schools at the June A&A meeting. The blue column in the special projects area, which represents planning, increased by 1. We moved the buildings and ground supply and equipment inventory consult into that column. And the orange column in the special projects area, which represents reports issued, increased by 1 also. That was our mid-year risk assessment update, which had an internal memo done to satisfy. There was no actual report done to present to the committee, but there was an internal audit memo that summarized all our work. So now we'll move to page 5, and this goes over all our audit jobs and the status, which we just went over at an overview. This is each detailed audit job and where it stands, what stage it's in. And so basically jobs number 1, 2, 3, 5, 9, and 14 have all progressed to the next stage of the audit process. And then you'll see on page 7, 8, and 9, these are Chevron reports. It's the same information, just in a little different format for people that like that information in that format.
Kevin, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
The HR audit of benefits, it looked like you said, if you go up to the other, not the Chevron format, it wasn't completed. Is that because we just completed it with this vote?
Correct.
I mean, it's completed. Okay, so now that
Right.
will go into report issued.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, got it. All right. I wanted to make sure we were all talking about the same thing.
Yeah, and I
We
can
just
jump-
try not to assume anything, so we would like to vote.
Yeah. I
if I can
don't
jump
blame
in
you
here,
for that.
this is the status as of 3/31. So you're
Okay,
that's
Oh, thank
actually
you.
next month. It'll
got
move
it,
to
got it.
complete it. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so slide 10, these are the adjustments, additions, and deletions to the annual audit plan. We have the Council of Great City Schools Transportation follow-up we've added to our annual audit plan. That's a consult similar to the HR project. The mid-year risk assessment update has been added. And the deletions were the PDK curriculum follow-up consult and the talent acquisition and recruitment, which was actually planned as a job. But again, once the Council of Great City Schools came in and did their HR, we found a lot of their information was duplicative of what we would have done and had we done the audit. So we would like to remove that from our audit plan. And there are no other adjustments. So moving to slide 12. This is a little different format than we've presented the follow-up recommendations. That's because this stuff comes right from Teammate now. we're able to pull that out into this bar graph and the table without having to massage the data at all. So this is the treasurer's perspective. Oops, sorry about that. And then this is business and operations. And again, the superintendent's office, we'll get theirs once school gets out and the summer gets going, and maybe we can get an update on that by, say, August, and get that presented separately. I will note that there are stages. So you have in progress, implemented, not verified, then closed, verified, closed, no longer applicable, and closed, management accepts the risk. So we've tried to document that by stage and by risk rating, high, moderate, or low. On slide 14, we've talked a lot about that today. These are the audit jobs or reviews that have been done by external organizations that we put on here to track. And then they'll stay on here. And as we go out to do follow-ups, then they'll move across here as closed or validated, et cetera. So we'll keep you abreast of what goes on there. Page 16, these are our staff professional development webinars and other training events that the staff has taken advantage of here in the past couple months since our last A&A meeting. And page 17, we continue to assist management as they reach out to us. We've assisted with the district's Code of Bus Pass initiative and the vendor performing the review of the purchasing process review. We also have a member on the Facilities Master Planning Committee. That way they are ready to handle any questions they may have as they go through that process.
That's great. I'm glad to see that. That's important.
Slide 19, it's the IT risk assessment being performed by Schneider Downs. It did begin on April 7th after consultation with Ms. Vierny, our CIO, relating to the optimal timing of that project. Originally, I think we had it slated a little before April 7th, but given the demands on her and her staff, we worked with them to make sure it would work for everybody. And then the mid-year risk assessment update. It's been finalized, assignments have been made, and that work has been deemed, for the work that has been deemed significant. And then the final thing is the OIA non-personnel budget was presented to FAC in March. And the last slide, slide 21, just has the table of organization and the budget numbers for the Office of Internal Audit. I'll be glad to take any questions if anybody has any.
I have one. I guess it might be for Carolyn or for Co-Chair Beckerly. Do we need to approve the changes to the audit plan? It would feel like from a governance perspective, we would need to approve the additions and deletions to the plan.
And in the past, I have asked for that. I believe this is the first time that we have, yeah, I believe all these are new. In the past, I had talked about removing the PDK because the superintendent is reporting on that directly to the board. But you are correct, Mr. Jordan. In the past, I have asked for a vote for these additions and deletions. And then when I take this report to the board, I can report out that the audit committee has approved these adjustments to the work plan.
Okay.
So if Vice Chair Beckerly, would you like to call for that now, or?
If there are no further questions about the dashboard presentation, would somebody like to move to vote to accept the additions and deletions to the audit plan?
So moved.
Second.
All right, would you take the roll, Madam Auditor?
Yes. And the second was Chair Ragland. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Me going paperless isn't working out as hard as I thought it would.
It's so hard.
Yeah, especially
just
for someone
so-
like me.
Well, I feel that.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Chair Ragland,
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Jordan,
Yes.
and that motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
You're very welcome. And this report has come such a long way over the last several years. This is really good. And congratulations to you and your team. This is very, very helpful.
Thank you. Well, I just thank the team. Kevin, Mr. Crum, do you have anything else?
No, that was everything. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay. With that, is there nothing else
Not for the
I
Office
would
of
like to
Internal
mention at this time?
Audit. Nothing from the Office of Internal Audit. Thank you.
You know, it occurs to me if I could take a few minutes, only because as we were talking about the amendments to the charter, and I realized that it's helpful for our committee members to know some of the things that are happening, the really exciting things and big structural changes. And so, for example, as James said much more eloquently than I, we're aligning all of our committee work to make sure it aligns with the strategic plan that we're in the process of finalizing and implementing. And that is a very exciting step with a lot of implications for how we're moving forward and moving forward together. And we're moving forward as an organization, focusing with laser-like precision on these specific goals and guardrails in an effort to really change the outcomes for our kids and improve the outcomes for our students. The other thing that's worth sharing with the committee is that we're in the middle of this FMP process that we're taking an incredibly intentional and visionary approach to, and very different than what we've done in the past. So we're approaching the facilities master planning process regionally. And so each board member has been assigned to a region. We have 6 regions, and we've found community members who will be co-chairing community conversations that will be continual throughout the process, such that we're getting input. And we've just started this week, maybe toward the end of last week, having these committee meetings on Zoom where everyone from the community, whether it's teachers, parents, administrators, nonprofits, businesses, pastors, are all invited and encouraged to attend, and we're establishing priorities and values. And then each region, the chair people, that we have a student ambassador, we have a family ambassador, and we have a regional superintendent, takes that input back to the overall committee, and that's taken into account as we begin this process of facilities master planning. And at every step, we're going to go back to the community, and it's very exciting. And we've had quite a bit of engagement in this process, and we hope it'll grow. And so now that I'm thinking about it, when we're done with this meeting, I'll send you all links to some of the materials and the surveys, because certainly you all have been paying a lot of attention to a lot of the details of our organization and what's going on, and we would like to hear from you. So this is both a plug to ask you to consider participating, or at least complete the surveys and follow along with the process, but also just to let you know that there's some pretty exciting stuff happening. And we should be sharing that.
Can I add one comment? I
Yeah.
just want to thank Carolyn and her team. You know, when you come into an organization and you do your assessments or your audits, you really are trying to uncover maybe what you need to improve upon, right? And so I really appreciate the team collaborating with management to make sure that we do not just we check things off, but that we are really looking at sustainability and systemic change that it's going to allow our organization to run more efficiently and effectively. And that's what we want, because it's a large organization and people are going to ask questions, as they should. They want to know how well we are managing taxpayers' dollars, grant funds, et cetera. But what's more important, I think, is that we have the right structures in place. And then, and we have the right people with the right expertise to know what to look for and know how to course correct. And so I just appreciate that the process that we're taking and the intentionality that that we're taking, and that the board is helping us, as you know, Stan and Caroline and I, as your direct reports, to make sure that that alignment is there across the organization as we continue to move forward. So thank you to Carolyn and your team. You know, when you look at internal audits, you know, people get, like, oh my gosh, but you have made this very important, and it's a priority. We're going to make sure that we continue to move forward, you know, as we should, with integrity. But it is refreshing in a sense that we can do this work collaboratively, because we all want the same thing. And that is a strong organization with systems in place. And those systems can be tested by metrics that we put in place. And we report that out to our organization. So thank you.
My pleasure. On behalf of the team.
All right. And with that, shall we move to adjourn?
Well, we have Mr. Collins. We have another report.
Oh, I missed that.
Yes, we've got the safety and security update. I'm sorry about that. I allowed you to miss that one, Madam Co-Chair. I should have reminded you earlier.
Okay.
Mr. Collins has waited patiently for us. I do not want to forget him. Good afternoon, sir, and good to see you.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Okay.
Good.
Good. I don't know if everybody, saw the actual video of some of the features we have upgraded within the district to help keep our schools safe. One of them was our visitor management system, which currently is Raptor, formerly Lobby Guard. And the reason for that upgrade was that, we needed to report out district-wide instead of in silos with each individual unit. So we wanted to make sure that we had administrative rights to anytime the superintendent or anybody else asks for a report, how many visitors, how many sexual offender hits we have had within a week, a month, a year, that we can provide that information at will. In the past, we had to take and go back to the vendor to get that information, but we felt it's best that we are able to get it and, get that information quickly from our seat as a safety and security seat. So myself and Mr. Nairi, we are the system administrators for visitor management throughout the district. So that was key to us, because also that information comes through different audits with the school safety, but also with the KPI, key point indicators, normally ask for that kind of information. And we just wanted to make sure that we had the best processes in place to get that report. And then the other upgrades, we are currently, and it's going to take a while, but we are upgrading our camera surveillance systems from analog, which is pretty much coaxial cable cameras, to digital, which is IP and cloud cameras. Better picture, better clarity, viewing, playback, the features are so clear and crisp, because, we also help with also internal audits and investigations within the district, internally and externally. So to have that was key, makes it so much a quicker process, and it's faster to download video, faster to find video, and there again, like I said, the clarity is great, is great. So we are in the process now of doing that. We have several schools that are done. We're going back and hitting some of our legacy schools. Most of our elementaries only have, one DVR and 16 cameras. So of course they need more eyes to help protect and understanding, cameras just gives you the evidence or whatever you need, after a situation has happened. But it also becomes key in helping our external partners. We've helped the fire department, we've helped the police department, children's services, and of course, internal investigations. So, we needed something that was more streamlined, efficient, and like you said, better quality. Any questions?
Questions from the committee for Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins, thank you and your team for all of your work. Understand what it means to retrofit some of these older buildings. We've been seeing legislation the last several board meetings that appropriates funds to getting this work done. Just really appreciate your commitment to keeping our CCS family safe. Thank you for your report today, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. With that, is there anything else from the committee? I apologize for being so bad at trying to take over the shoes of Chair Ragland. I've got to brush up. All right, so we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. All right, looks like Mr. Jordan second.
Second, yes.
Okay, Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Jordan,
Yes.
Chair Ragland,
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly,
Yes.
and that motion carried.
All right.
All right, everybody take
Have a
care.
good,
Everybody had a nice evening.
you too.
Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank
Bye now.
you.
Thank you.